So hey guys, we are back. I'm waiting on parts for this thing still, so a lot of stuff I can go ahead and start putting back in the case. I did want to show you some of the parts that are actually already in here. One of them is the Sonex no walk bushing kit with a bearing. Here is the part number for that dude, 36006-SPB. Comes with a bushing, some shims, and the Torrington bearing. The bushing looks like this. It's stepped, goes in from top of the case down to the bottom. It's got a little bit of a ridge on it right there, and that is to take the place of that 3-tang washer that's usually in the bottom of these. Most of the time when you pull these things apart stock, this is a 3-tang washer that actually sits in the bottom. You can kind of see those 6 little nubs sticking up. They just fit in between there. This little thrust washer, this is an old one I had from the transmission I built at one point. It actually sits on the upward part of the output shaft as they just spin on each other. Well, in order to put these things in, you have that stacked up like there, and then that bearing that they give you, typical Torrington bearing, just like you find in most of these transmissions, and a shim. Just measure your combined thickness of the two that I previously showed you, and then you pick out your shims. I'm not real sure what sizes they come with, but there's about 4 shims in the pack, and I've yet to find one that wasn't correct. The orientation is shim goes down and the Torrington bearing drops in with in this setup right here, just like this, and drops all the way down just like that. And then your output shaft center section cluster will sit down on top of that, and basically it rollerizes your tail shaft. Before we start messing with that tail shaft section, remember that really thin snap ring? Well, she is going to go in down here on the bottom groove. I always try to put the opening of these snap rings kind of here in this big opening area. So your center support will sit on top of that. Like, here's your basic center support. This one's already set up for dual feed and everything, so it's missing this second O-ring. And this thing, let's see, where's that tang? That tang right there is where you'll line everything up, and it'll kind of just drop in just like that, and it'll sit like that. Mind you, the rest of the stuff will be on top of it. There's a another groove right here where the snap ring is going to go, and that'll hold it in place. And when I get done with that, I'll show you how to put that center section together and what I use to drop it in. So here we are assembling our center section, center support, lower output shaft cluster, whatever you want to call it. Basically, here's your middle shaft, your output shaft, part pawl and everything locks it down right here. This is actually one of your carrier gear assemblies. This right here is your sun gear. Now, mind you, these sun gears, there's a chamfer right there and flat right there. Make sure the chamfered side goes down on the bottom. So here's another one of your sun gears assemblies. 2 holes, one right there, one right there. The older 4L80s have the bigger lube hole. The newer 4L80s, this hole is a whole lot smaller, but you need these holes to line up with each other to where you can see through them. I don't know if you can tell or not, but lined up, that's how they go. that will drop in like that. And then you have another reaction carrier. This is kind of a crucial thing. I've seen one of these come in that did not have this tang. This looks like the same thing that goes on the bottom right here on the original transmissions. It is. So they do not make the plastic or poly nylon, whatever that thing is, anymore for these. But these do replace it. There are some tabs right there. Drop them in. Looks just like that right there. Now your other carrier will drop in on that, and you kind of got to work it a little bit because you've got everything's got to kind of mesh up and whatnot, so it kind of gets a little cantankerous. Eventually they'll just drop in. Sometimes you may have to just pull this whole assembly out. And get this to roll into place like that. Then you can drop your sun gear and all that stuff in. It'll fall right into place. Here is another Torrington bearing assembly. It's got a big lip on the inside. Drops right down right in there. This is your Spragg. And here's the other part of that Torrington bearing. It fits right there on the top. And this has a brass washer that will sit right there. And usually it falls out. A lot of times you need to get some assembly lube or something to hold it in place. This one dropped right into place like I want to. And that right there is your lower support, center support, output shaft cluster. I'm going to get me a lifting device to drop it in place. Stand that up. There's a little groove right there. Get it nice and snug, because this thing is all there. Now it's ready to drop in place. All right, going back in, we need to put our low reverse band in. And there are two big old holding nubs that this thing will drop into. Right about like, well, let's drop one more down here. Let's see if I can finagle this in just a little bit. There we go. That'll drop in there like that. Usually you can stick a screwdriver or something into the low reverse hole and kind of push it all into place like that. Now you're ready for the spacer ring that goes in. Right there on that lower set of, there's a ridge, there's a lower set of snap ring holes. Goes right there on the lower set. And now we will lower in the center support section. Here we go. Kind of clock it a little bit. And down she falls. So now we can take those off and get our beveled snap ring in. Like I said, one side's got a bevel, one side's flat. Beveled side is up. And that will drop into this snap ring groove. Come on now. Alright, something didn't quite sit right, but now I got it back into place where it goes. Snap rings are in place. Now we can start putting our intermediate clutch assemblies in, and we'll get those going right now. So, like I said on the tear out video, the big old, this right here is Turbo 400 steel, followed by your typical just intermediate clutch, factory 4L80 steel, another clutch, another steel, another clutch, another steel, another clutch, and the pressure plate. Doesn't really matter how these are clocked going down in, and you just go in. Like I said, this transmission, after the previous rebuild, it didn't actually see a whole lot of miles. It really went bad with that software really quick. Now, your pressure plate, it is missing some grooves. This is the only one that is, depending on how you clock it. So it will sit down in here just like that. That big open area where I put all my snap ring openings at, it'll camp out right there. And then we will go back together with the really big heavy duty snap ring that you'll get in your HD2 kits. And you know, if you want to, I recommend upgrading this because intermediates do see a lot of work. They are a big surface area clutch. Drop it down kind of in the same spot the opening is in. Get your really good screwdriver and just kind of work it in that last groove. And she is set. This will be followed by your direct pack of clutches, your direct drum and all that. I'll be putting that back together here in just a second. Good idea to always get your clutches and everything kind of lined up because everything kind of has to just drop down into that. All right, it's time to put the directs together. So this is our direct drum. locked down, pistons in good shape, everything like that. Spragg back here, moving like it's supposed to. In this particular transmission, I removed the wave plate, and instead of a wave plate, I went with a set of the forward steels. The forward steels are just a little bit thinner, and that allows me to get six frictions and 6 plates in this drum. So we'll start with a steel, friction, steel, and you'll kind of see these notches right here. Those notches are pretty much to let you know that this is a different steel than what normally goes in that. The actual steels that go in this direct drum have a little different setup on it. They do not have those notches. So back to our put in. And then our pressure plate. It's right there on the top of all that. And here is our snap ring. Lock that down. Mind you, you will get pretty oily working on transmissions. So not a whole lot of particular spot where all this stuff goes. Snap ring wise, I mean, just in is in. And she is ready to go. Go ahead and give those a little bit of a alignment, because you'll be dropping in the forward section once we get that project built. You know, and take it all apart still. But this right here is about as far as we're going to be able to make it tonight. Because like I said, we're waiting on parts, mostly the forward drum assembly. I've actually got that, took that, cleaned it, everything. So we're just waiting on the components that go with that. But we will get back to the case and get dropped in. I want to just show a comparison of the forward steels versus a intermediate steel. I'm using one of these burn up ones that are slightly concave. So this right here is just like what we put in there, a typical forward steel, but not nearly as burned up. This is a brand new direct steel that came in a kit that I didn't use because I was doing the adjustments. But as you can see, there is a pretty decent amount of thickness. And like I said, they have a little bit different shape by comparison. I was telling you about the notch. Where's it? There's the notch. So that is the difference between a actual direct and a forward. Another thing before we go in, I want to show you this this Spragg in here. It's a one-way Spragg, so you want this thing to freewheel clockwise and lock the other direction. I have put one of these in upside down because it's easy to do. Didn't follow directions like I was supposed to. Luckily I had the vehicle up on jack stands and everything. Just kind of running through the gears, checking it out. First gear is a little sluggish. Second gear didn't really want to hit. Third gear, everything just stopped. And luckily it was just at idle, so I didn't tear anything up, but it's a 4L80 in an F body, and that is a pain in the butt to pull out, let alone put in. So mind your Spraggs. Also, if you're going to be doing some of this, this is what I'm using, assembly glue. It's good to hold bushings, bearings, all kinds of stuff in place. Then, you know, when it gets hot, it just kind of melts and it's fine, doesn't hurt anything. Blue is what I use. I bought this a couple years ago. I don't build a tremendous amount of transmissions, but I've probably built 10 transmissions, and that's about all I've used on it so far. Well, before we get started on that, we'll go ahead and throw our band in here. The band will sit right here. There is a notch right there. It goes on that lug. And in it drops. This is going to be controlled by the little servo port right there. And that's how that's going to go together. So before we drop this in, I had mentioned those Teflon seals on the center support where I left that one off. When you put the new ones on, they're a little bit stretched out. Now I found this thing right here at my Lowe's, Home Depot, something like that. And there's the part number. Maybe if that's upside down, I don't know. Anyway, comes with like some kind of rubber sleeve or something inside of it. I just took that out, and this makes a great tightening kit. You just drop it in right there and let it sit overnight or however long you're going to be tight. When you're getting ready to drop your direct on there, take it off, it comes right out. It's small enough you can use a quarter drive ratchet with a 8mm and take it off inside the case. But also lube those up with that blue goo. Lube up the inside part of that direct drum with that blue goo so everything will drop into place as good as it can. And now let's hope for the best. This is not exactly the funnest thing to do because you just kind of have to bear claw this thing in there. They make a tool for it. I don't have it, don't want it. And then this is just kind of the part where you kind of have to wiggle it up and down and move it around to get it to drop into place. Sometimes, a lot of times I'll usually get about that far, get frustrated, or get tired of hurting my fingers because it's not what I wanted to do. And I'll end up just pulling the snap ring out, probably just pull the whole thing out, tear the clutches back out of it, and fight this thing empty. And now that it's empty, it's a little bit easier to manhandle. So sometimes you kind of have to lift and twist. And that Spragg is turning, the clutches are turning. And I know that thing's not all the way down. And there's another one, getting closer. I think I got one more to go. There she is. She is down. And this is usually about the time I go, well, maybe I should check. And I'll pull it out. Everything's lined up. And I'll go to drop it back into place. And then the fight begins again. So, kind of one of those things I get paranoid whether or not I'm going to let the clutches drop into place and whatnot. was so close. I shouldn't have taken it out the first time. But that's just me being me. Looks like everything's where it needs to be. Well, I'm not going to bore you with this. I'll get this thing dropped in place where it goes, and we'll continue on to the next step. So there you have it, everyone. Directs are in, direct clutches are back in, everything's in place. One trick I have found, and you kind of have to be careful, is like this is the part that actually is going to engage into these clutches from the forward section. So I use that to kind of get everything lined up and everything. But be careful when you drop that thing in, because if it drops and seats all the way in, it's a bear to get out of there. And then you may be pulling your direct drum back out, getting this thing out, and then trying to set the whole thing back over again. This time I got lucky, dropped in place, so all my frictions are right in place to get everything done when I drop in the forward section, whenever I get parts. Also, we need to put the center support bearing or center support bolt back in this thing too before we really go any further. Probably should have done that, but one of those parts you don't want to reuse. I'm waiting on it to come in, so we'll just kind of hold off and we'll wait for parts to go in, and that'll give me a chance to open up the pump and the valve body and clean out all the nasty that was in there, I'm sure, and go on about our work. Welcome back, everybody. I have got parts to finish the 4L80, so let's get started. Here is our forward drum, our new forward piston. As you can see if I can get the light to show it. But right there, you can kind of see where it says forward at. There we go, a little bit better. So lubed up the inside, lubed up the seal, lubed out the outer seal, lubed up inside here, and we are just gonna try to walk this thing in. Probably have to roll it with your tool to kind of get it to drop into place. A lot of times this is just kind of a time consuming by feel type deal, so you'll end up rolling this thing around and it'll push in and you get frustrated, and just take your time, and then eventually you'll just hold your mouth just right and it'll fall right into place. have to go grab another tool. There she goes. She's installed. Next in my pile of goodies here, new wavy. Not a new wavy, but the wavy goes right there. And then got clutches. See what the appropriate alignment for these things are. Clutches been soaked, so the appropriate stacking of this is cushion plate, steel, clutch, plate, friction, plate, friction, plate, friction. Remember the notches I was telling you about? The forwards. That's the appropriate alignment, but I did forget that. So bear with me. I'm going to set up and get this thing in place, and I'll show you how to get this thing right here put back together. Alrighty, got my fixture in case anybody wants to see it. Just a simple welded up thing with a big piece of all thread. Sit it down here, drop your drum, and this works for your forwards and your directs, and even your, bear with me here, center support clutching. So spring pack, drop it into place, keeper. Let's go ahead and just set it down there because that's where you're going to be working at. Kind of have a flat washer that came off of a door off a JLG telehandler. That'll sit right there. And then my multi-position press. So it's kind of not 100% square, so I kind of have to jockey it around a little bit, but it gets the job done. You know, I don't have the really cool clutch press, but you know, make do with what I've got. It's worked so far for a while. Tighten it down to where you got access to the spring groove. Another pair of pliers. Recommend getting a set of these. You can get them at your transmission shop. Great for doing these. Loads them up, as you can see, and then get them out of there. Not quite in the groove just yet, but a little bit of coaxing, and actually need to tighten this down just a little bit more to get off the little humps on the spring pack. And she is in. So now we just loosen it all off. She's in place. Remove all these parties. We are pretty much done with this thing, so I can get it out of my hair. That way I don't have to fight with it anymore. All right, back to laying our clutches and everything in. So, cushion, steel, friction, steel, friction, steel, friction, steel, friction, steel, friction, and this is our new, what they're calling a hub. So before we go on with that, we need to put our direct hub in place. Let's see if I can get this bushing. Probably more purple than I really needed, but oh well. Hold that critter in place. Now we just kind of get that spinning, wiggling, getting it all to fall into place. Probably should have put this in first. Made my life a lot easier. But I believe that is all she wrote. No, I got one more to drop in. No. Take that back, I was in. All right, that's in place. The drum, and scoot this back so we can actually see what I'm doing here. And our snap ring. Snap ring's in place. All right, now there's another brass that goes right here. Let's see where I've laid it out at. Found it. Another one, pretty much identical to the one that was in there. Put some glue to hold it in place. Now we are ready to drop into the case with it. So next get back, we'll go from there. So before we drop this in the case, I had to get a new thrust bearing for this. The way this thing sits, silver side up, sits right there, and that's where the rest of your planetary carrier and everything sit on that. So I'll show you that more when we get ready to start stabbing things in the case. But I'm going to get this stabbed into the directs, and we'll go from there. So as you can see, I've got the forward stabbed in place. Next thing we're going to do is go ahead and drop in the 4th gear clutch assembly. There's the bolt hole that I was telling you about. So it will drop in pretty much like that. Line up and everything. And find a new bolt wherever it went. Here's my old one. I'm just going to stab that in place to hold it in place while I actually find the other one. And that'll keep that thing keep it situated where it needs to be. Just to say that. Too much. Next thing we're going to do is set our overruns, and they will just drop in place like that. And this is where I go ahead and stab all the clutches at, because it's a little bit easier than these. Have alignment notches, those V-groove alignment notches. They go right there at that top spot. Clutch. Steel. Clutch. Steel. Clutch. Steel. Clutch, and the pressure plate. Pressure plate orients the same way as the rest of them. And that is in place. Now we will throw the snap ring in that. And then we will be ready to start tearing apart the pump and the valve body. Snap rings in place. And there you have it. That is the barrel of the case. And I'm going to set up so we can take a look at the pump and catch you here in a second. All right, now we are ready to separate the pump and check it out, make sure we don't have any surprises in here waiting on us. Parts halves apart, and here we are. Pump looks good. A little bit of trash in there, which kind of what I expected from what was going to happen with this thing. This right here, surface is good shape. You know, you can't catch your fingers. A little bit of scoring, but I mean nothing's terrible that's going to prevent this pump from working real well. As you can see, kind of that's where it all rides, but a lot of times they'll get ridges right here. Usually that's from your converter being set incorrectly with the flywheel and all that stuff. Here are your pump gears. Dots right there. Dots mean it goes, well, face up anyway. That's the best I could tell you. Everything looks good in here. Just needs a good little cleanup. Nothing scary. Bushing's in good shape. Like I said, I'm going to take this, get this all cleaned up and everything. One thing to notice, sometimes these pumps, they'll machine them to fit a larger gear and everything, basically to salvage a pump. This particular gear right here, let me clean this up a bit. Very squared off right here. I don't know if the camera is going to pick that up, but there is a chamfer right there. You want that chamfered side to go down. I've actually put one of these pumps together, and it will not move. It will not let anything move. So make sure you get your chamfered edge right there in the downward spot. And yep, give me just a few minutes on this and we'll get her cleaned up and everything. Old gasket, don't need, got a new one. There's our boost solenoid, or our boost regulator and such. We'll pull some of them out, take a look at them probably. I know this thing's actually been pretty good shape every time I've been into this particular one, but we will get this thing cleaned out and wiped down and make sure it's in good working order, and we'll get it reassembled and we'll go ahead and drop it into the barrel of the case. That way we can get the transmission flipped over and finish up on the valve body. Okay, I got the pumps all cleaned up. There's a few things I want to show you. There is a drilled passage right there. That is one of the instructions in the HD2 shift kit that a lot of people end up buying. Also, there is a passage right there, and that leads towards the pump. Flip this thing over so you can have a better view of it. But that ridge right there, that is drilled out to 1/4 inch. So that's one of the things they recommend doing on the HD2 shift kits. So I'm going to finish wiping this thing down and giving it a good once over, and then I'm going to assemble this and I'll show you how to get it done. All right, so outer gear, chamfered side, put a little bit of lube on it, that way this thing doesn't start up dry. Don't want to do that, just like priming an engine. There, like that. Our gear set. Now, inner gear. A little bit of lube here. And that will drop into place like so. Now, a good rule of thumb to help everything move really good, just kind of wipe it down with some assembly goo. That way it kind of slides around and moves like it needs to. Top half of your pump. Drops down. Just like that. And go ahead and get your 5 bolts. Get them started. Do not tighten them down just yet. because there's a little bit of an alignment that you have to do to this thing. And there. My super high-end Home Depot or Lowe's alignment tool. And get that dropped into place. Loosen it up just a little bit. Get her to drop on in where I want it. And I'll get a better picture of it, kind of where you get it lined up at, here in just a second. Maybe. Wrong direction. All right, as you can see, there's a bevel right here, and I just kind of get that band clamp right there at the edge of that bevel all the way around, and that just holds everything in place while you get these things tightened down. I believe these torque down to about 18. I will double check and let you know, but I will get these torqued down. We are all lined up. We're ready to start torquing these things down. 18 foot-pounds. Crisscross pattern, basically like torquing down a wheel. I don't always go 18 immediately. I'll usually hit it about 10 or so. And then I'll just kind of work my way around. That way I know I get good even torque all the way around. What I usually end up doing is I've got a hub off an old converter, and I like to check, make sure everything spins. As everything kind of gets tight. So basically just an old hub that I cut out. Let's see where that's about right. Drops into place. Still spinning just fine. Then I flip her over and I proceed on. And to hold this thing up, I just have a piece of 4-inch exhaust that I had laying around. Makes a great stand when you get it all stood up. So we'll go right back to it. Go ahead and go hit our 18. And there you have it. Go ahead and get her flipped over and make sure she still spins freely. So no binding, everything. Pump's assembled like it's supposed to be. Now comes the fun part, trying to get this thing out. Probably have to grab a pair of pliers to get this thing out. Another one of those tools that I need to build. Alright, so here we are, last part of our case. Pump gasket. Grab your goo. Give her a quick wipe down. Now, your gasket has up written on it, and it goes on the top. In the correct orientation, apparently. Right about boom like that. Everything lines up. Some more. Move up this side of the case real well. So lube up your input shaft because it's got a bushing that's got to slide over. And there's some seals right here, which didn't put a whole lot of information on those. This transmission did not have very many miles on it. So ran into a few issues with this Holly, wouldn't release fast enough or something. So lube up your bushings right here, and also bushing in here, and you got some sealing rings right here. Also, another thing to look out for on these pumps, there is a little plastic thrush washer right there. So now, I always aim my pump with these two at the bottom of the case, and then just drop it into place like that. A lot of times it is not that easy, but today it was. So we're gonna run with it. Now we start putting our case bolts back in. Make sure I get my alignment the way I want it. May not dropped in there just dead center yet. Yeah, needs to spin just ever so slightly. Yeah, a little bit of a pry bar. All right, now we're on the right track. And what I said in a previous video, there are little seals on these bolts. Like I said, this build does not have any time on it, so they're gonna live to fight another day. Coincidentally, I do have another transmission that is going to be coming probably here in the morning, I believe. and it is getting a full-blown rebuild. Bushings, clutches, steels, gaskets, rubbers, HD2, shift kit, all that stuff. And there's going to be a few things I'm going to use, a few things I probably will not use. But you know, I'll kind of make a video of that. That way I can show you kind of what all goes on with it. Now these also torque to 18 foot-pounds. I don't know what some people use for their torque wrenches and such. I am using a Mac Tools 3/8 torque wrench. See if we can see the part number right there. That right there, that's what I'm using. That's probably backwards in the camera, but I apologize. This is what I'm using. I recommend using a good torque wrench, just because when you start torquing the valve body bolts, they tend to be like, I think it's like 106 foot-pound or inch-pounds. So you can really get yourself in a bind if you're using a cheaper Harbor Freight style torque wrench. I've made that mistake before. All of a sudden it's getting tight, then all of a sudden, nope, nothing there. So I know they're kind of pricey. I know these things are about $300, $350, but well worth the money if you're doing a lot of this stuff and you really need to be dead on. So kind of the same school of thought I use with the pump itself. Just kind of get them started, then go ahead and get them to their appropriate number. These are kind of tricky up here in the top part of the case. Got that one. Sounds like I got new neighbors. And then just kind of a good final check across the back side. You've got a gasket in there that's kind of compressing, and just double check all that. That will pretty much finish that up. And now basically your case is installed and together. And I had me an O-ring that needs to go on there. So I'll hunt that one up. Anyway, but that is basically the case, everything in it. And we're fixing to flip this thing on its back to expose the valve body stuff and get the valve body tore apart and put all our check balls in and finish this thing off. And hopefully I can get this thing back to this guy here in a couple days. So here are a few things I want to show some people before we get really too deep with this. I found the new bolt that goes right here that holds our clutch together. That's that Torx 40, And here is the center support bolt. That is at 12.3/8. And I'm going to go ahead and get those torqued down and put where they torqued where they need to go. That way I don't have to worry about anything else in this case. Another thing, there is a small screen right here, and it actually plugs in right there. I usually remember that thing after I've already stabbed the valve body once. So this time I think I'm a little bit ahead of the curve. So that's a few things. I usually don't put my check balls in the case until I'm actually ready to drop the valve body on, because there's too much of a chance that if I decide I need to flip this thing over, I forget about it. Check balls go everywhere. So going on, I will get these torqued down and then we will start working on the valve body. So that bolt right there, that torques to 12 foot-pounds. That bolt right there, which is your center support bolt, torques to 32 foot-pounds. All right, everybody, we are back to finish this transmission off today. So I have our valve body, got it pulled apart, cleaned up and everything, and we're fixing to start going back with it. I've got a screw right here, one of the valve body bolts right here, and right here. This is what they are calling the Z-bolt hole. It's just an alignment tab for your separator plate and everything like that. So before we get to moving on, little screen filter right here pops in place right there. There is our torque converter lockup solenoid. It is going to install right here in this hole. I believe it points over just like that. Give it a good little push. And it has a retaining key right here. Just pops in. And that is it. The next thing we're going to install is our force motor control. This is kind of what some of the driving force of this transmission. I think it controls, honestly I have no idea what it controls, but it's supposed to be in the transmission, so we're putting it in. And it just slides into place, and there's a little retaining keeper. That holds it down, keep it from going anywhere. Has a Torx bolt. This bolt is a 27. And it just threads in there like that. And that's a 40. Here we go. Has that in place. Now we are ready to start laying the valve body gaskets and everything. Like I said, Z-hole right here and Z-hole right there at the bottom of this thing. So that being said, all right, I'm not real sure what just happened, but my camera quit recording. So here we are. Plates in place, gaskets are in place, accumulators in place. Tightening up bolts. Just to kind of get the thing going. dig into our book, figure out what our torques need to be. You'll see right here, this is a copy of the ATSG 4L80 repair manual. It's pretty good for most of the middle 90s years. Some of the newer stuff, it doesn't have everything. There's a few updates on it, but pretty much it'll get you taken care of no matter what you're looking at. I bought the book and I got to using it, and I get it dirty. That's why the pages look terrible. I also save a bunch of stuff like the HD2 shift kit manuals. I put that in there, but I went ahead and cut the pages out and put them in laminated sleeve. We don't have to worry about this stuff getting dirty. But it's always a great thing, excuse me, great reference material to have, because it tells you where everything goes, torque specs on everything. Like it'll tell you what your specs are right there for tightening up the pan gasket. Gives you your order for torquing your bolts. Let's see here, accumulator right here, that's what we're chasing down. Accumulator housing. Tighten bolts to tighten 6 bolts, switch manifold, that's not the one I'm looking for. Accumulator housing to valve body, 97 inch-pounds, right there. So, once again, having the right tool for the job is crucial, because if you get the Harbor Freight click ratchet, yeah, I know it's $9, but their 97 inch-pounds and my 97 inch-pounds are two completely different things. You'll realize it's way more than 97 inch-pounds about the time it gets really, really loose on you and you've already stripped the threads out. Mind you, it's aluminum. And like I said, I always like to make kind of a couple passes. It just ensures that everything kind of drops in place, snugs up like it's supposed to. You don't have one just going way crazy and gets everything out of alignment. And now you just go ahead and give her the final snug. 97. This thing has been a lifesaver to me, because I have extreme confidence in torquing all this stuff down, and just don't have to worry about it. And like I said, this is the quarter drive. It's kind of, and also it's another Mac tool. See if the part number will come up. Right there, and that right there will pretty much get your valve body tightened up. And I will move us to the transmission case and we'll get our check balls in place and start getting everything bolted down. All right, so here we are at the case. Like I said, we're gonna put the check balls in now because I am ready for that. So we have check ball here, check ball here. Do myself a favor and turn my reference material in the direction of what I'm looking at. Let's see here, one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. 7 check balls. Next, we will put our little reverse servo pin actuator in, because that will actually sit underneath the valve body. Let me see, what else do I want to do? Here is our low reverse assembly. New seals on this, lubed up. Drops in like that. Sits right there. Let's see here. Where did I put my gaskets? Metal gasket. Only goes on one way. Coincidentally, I nailed it the first time. Whenever I take that thing off, I always put a new gasket on. Just kind of peace of mind for me. Drop your cover on. Get your bolts started. These, I believe, are 10s. They are 10s. See if I can make you see that a little bit better. There we go. And that's in place. I will have to check and see what the actual torque specs on these are. Something tells me 18 foot-pounds is what the torque spec is on it. Seems like 18 is kind of the magic number on these transmissions. So we will double check that. I'll get that torqued out and checked. This here is your manual shift valve. Put that back in our valve body real quick. So now we are ready to set the valve body in place. Double check and make sure I didn't leave anything out. So this is where you kind of got to finagle a few things. Got to get your little shifter linkage lined up. Now we will go back to our appropriate torquing of our bolts here. A few specialty ones. This one right here is our detent spring lever. It goes there. Some of these we're going to have to, there's a lube line that goes there, so I'm just going to start dropping in bolts. And be careful on those. One of those is a, okay, I do remember this one takes that. Not real sure why some of these transmissions have these on there. Don't know, but we'll go with it, I guess. Here is our fluid lube line. There's a hole back here in the back that pops into, and it matches up right there, right there. Short bolt. I think this is a specific to the older style 4L80s. I don't think the new 4L80s have that. I know the oil lube line is a different size line. It actually goes somewhere like here in the middle to back there. So this has that one little weird short bolt, and it goes right here. Here's our pressure control switch. All these are little diaphragms, and they monitor the pressure. It sits right there. All those little smaller holes here, as is a pressure manifold. And it sits just like that. Now this one has some smaller bolts, and they go in there like that. Like I said, they all have their own torquing. This one says 116, but I don't know. Sometimes I wonder. So here is a hold down clamp to our pipe tube. It'll go right there. And a couple of these have a clamp on them to hold hold the wiring harness. I don't really think it's terribly important where they go, as long as they're kind of in the right area. The cool thing about this one is this, okay, I got that one right there, this one right there. And I think that may be it for all the wiring harness hold downs. Bolt. And just start getting everything kind of threaded in where it goes. Detent lever. Now this transmission, it did not have the shift servos on it. He robbed these out to check another problem he was having. Like I said, this something about his Holley Terminator X, there was a glitch in the programming or something that just didn't get set correctly, so he took them out for testing, and I guess he never put them back in. I will give him the bolts and let him know that he needs to put them in, plug them in, and send it. And that will be all she wrote. So there's all our bolts in place. Go ahead and give everything kind of a snug them down. So anyway, here comes the fun part of trying to figure out where all the bolts are at. So this would be number 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's probably 5, but some of these things are kind of hard to read. Nope, that was actually 4. 5. 5 is right there by the manifold switch. Let's see. 6 is right there. Now to find 7. Like I said, some of these are a little bit tough to read. There's 7. There's 8. 8, 9, 10 is our clamp. 11, 12, 13, 'Sometimes she spins, sometimes she doesn't. 13, 14, this is 15. Sunglasses keep falling off. Done with these for the day. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 22 of them things. Now we have our 6 bolts right here. Those are 8 millimeters. They kind of see how they fall in place. So okay, that'd be 1, that'd be 2, here's 3, 4 is going to be this one here. 5 is here at the corner. And 6 is right there. So all these will torque down to 116 inch-pounds. So I have to torque this down right here. I'll get the specs on it. But I'm going to go ahead and stop the camera and get these torqued down, save you some boredom, and we'll finish up. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. All of your torque or your valve body bolts, 116 inch-pounds. Low reverse servo, these 6 bolts here, 18 foot-pounds. Here's our wiring harness and the clamps, all plugged in. Like I said, these 2 connectors right here are for your shift solenoids, which he has. There are 2 bolts that hold those in place. Those are 27 Torx that hold them all in place. Basically then, filter goes here, kind of sits over the top like that. Oil pan goes on, all the bolts on the oil pan, gasket, all that stuff, 18 foot-pounds, and that is it. This 4L80 is done. So the good news is I've got another one. Picked it up last night, and we are going to put some goodies in it. See what I've got. Full master rebuild kit, bushings, filter, etc., pistons, all the rubbers. What else did I pick up for this bad boy? I got the Sonic's Sure Cure Kit. I'm gonna put this thing in there and see how it goes. Anyway, so stick around. We will get going, and my weekend project consists of traction bars and brake conversion and wheels and everything else. So I will wrap this up and we will call it a day. Anyway, everyone, that's kind of the rundown on putting this transmission together. A few things, housekeeping with these transmissions. You've got a lot of parts spread out on a table. Keeping things somewhat organized is kind of the key to doing this, especially if you've never done one before. I've done a few of these, so I kind of know where everything goes. I pretty much use the oil pan as my catch-all. But it's nice to, as you're putting components together and then dropping them in the case and all that stuff, you just kind of bust your table, bust your work area a little bit, kind of get things kind of laid out to your next steps and everything. And it kind of opened my eyes making these videos, because I was just kind of always have stuff kind of just haphazardly laying around. So, you know, for the coherentness of the video and stuff like that, you kind of have to like plan this thing out and lay stuff out and clean stuff up. So my valve body video was that section of it. You know, cleaned the table off, wiped everything down. There was oil all over it, with all the components being laying there for a couple days and such. Another thing, those ATSG books, the 4L80 book, 6L80 book, I've actually found those online. Just Google ATSG 4L80 PDF or 6L80 PDF or 4L60 PDF. There's somebody that's got them on there. There's 100 pages in the book, so you can print them off. It's free. It may cost you a ream of paper, but like I said, sure beats paying $30+ for a book. And spend a little bit of money, buy one of the 3-ring binders. Get a little cover sheets, things like that. It just makes things nice, because your hands will always be greasy, always be nasty, and it just helps kind of protect the pages, and you can write notes on them. They're not going to smudge or go away or anything like that. So that being said, if you like what you're seeing, if you like the channel, subscribe to it. Helps me out. Like my videos. Comments, questions, suggestions, I take it all. I'm good with it all. So just let me know what you think, and y'all have a good one. We'll catch y'all later on.